Hello friends, I'm Jim Hale, coming to you today with an update to an important and disturbing story that we originally reported on 2 years ago. It was during the peak of COVID hysteria when Catholic homeschool mom Jane Bernardel was arrested in front of her children for not wearing a mask on the Feast of All Saints in the Diocese of Kansas City, Missouri. And I am sad to report today that the ordeal that Jane and her family endured has only worsened since our reporting. I traveled to Kansas a year and a half ago to meet with Jane and her family on their farm in Kansas outside the diocese. She's been trying to resolve her status ever since, and Jane joins us now to talk about what is really a shocking development in this unbelievable story. And Jane, I know that you've been attempting to address this quietly to no avail. So first of all, I want to thank you for having the courage to come forward to talk about this. And this has just been a terrible ordeal for you and your entire family. So Jane, please tell us about this, this letter that you received from the Bishop of Kansas City.
I received a penal precept, is what the canon lawyer and the church states it is, in March, dated February, telling me that I cannot go to any churches or functions in the diocese, with the exception of cemeteries.
Okay, Jane, we're gonna put this letter up, and we're gonna talk about some of the specifics of this letter, this canonical rebuke and penal precept. But first of all, for those that don't remember, if you can just go back and tell us exactly what happened on the Feast of All Saints 2 years ago.
On the Feast of All Saints in 2020, my family and I were praying in the church at Redemptorist in Kansas City, Missouri, St. Joseph Diocese, and I was asked to mask and did not mask, and not only did not mask, but told them I wasn't leaving. So that pretty much got them very upset and called the police right away and had me handcuffed and taken out of the church. So.
Yep. And it's important to point out here too that the priest who demanded that you put a mask on and who called the police was not wearing a mask.
No, he was not. In fact, he was depositioned by my attorney, and I think that, of course, only made them more mad. But in the deposition, he did state that he didn't remember whether he was masked or not. But me and my family were there, and he wasn't masked.
Yes, Jane, and so as I mentioned earlier, you know, I traveled out to Kansas to meet with you and your family because you live in the state of Kansas, but your family has been worshiping at a parish in Kansas City, correct? Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes, it sounds long, but it's a 20-minute drive.
Right. Exactly. And, you know, Jane, I just got to say that the time that I spent with your family was so wonderful. And it was just one of those moments, you know, we were out there, we had breakfast together. I got to see the farm. You know, it was just obvious to me that you guys are really attempting to live an abundant Catholic life on your farm. You attend the Latin Mass. You know, it's plainly obvious to see that your children love the Catholic faith. So could you just tell us a little bit about the impact that this has had on your family?
Well, first of all, my children still talk about you too, and what they, how you walked around the farm with them, and I don't think I was even outside when you did that with them. So they had a great time with you. The impact on my family. Well, we thought things were, rolling right along, and my case was actually dismissed in January of this year. So it did take a while, but it was dismissed. They like to remind me that I was supposed to, they waited 6 months so the judge said that I would dismiss it in 6 months if you didn't bother Redemptorist Church anymore. And so it was dismissed in January of this year.
Right.
Since that time, we assumed things were going to go smoothly for my family. Of course, life on earth right now isn't very smooth, and the church is in, it appears in, a sad state, but we didn't see what happened as somebody from actually a Kansas priest in the hierarchy called me and told me that was giving me the heads up that I was going to be served a censure. So I had to look up what that was. I didn't know what that meant even. And on the phone, he tried to describe it to me. And I said, but why would they do that? What have I done? And he said, Jane, it probably nothing. But people are being persecuted, and I think you're one of those people. They had asked him to serve the precept because, see, I'm out of their jurisdiction. So they had called him to ask him to participate in a meeting with me and the Kansas City, Missouri side, so they could give me the precept.
And Jane, let's talk about this precept, because when you read this is just unbelievably harsh. This comes from the Bishop of Kansas City, Most Reverend James V. Johnston Jr., so Bishop Johnston. And in this, there are all kinds of accusations that he makes against you. Could you just talk about some of these? Especially, he says that you actually struck one of the parishioners there, and that you've caused grave disturbances. What is your response to the accusations that the bishop is making in this letter?
Well, first of all, the accusations come from one person at the church, at the parish, and we've traveled together. We have been friends. Our families have known each other for 20 years. So, what happened that day was really surprising, disturbing, when really I was getting a wheelchair out of the church and pulling it out and holding the door open with my body at the same time. So it's the front of a church and a door to go in. So it's extremely heavy, but the chair was aluminum, a very light wheelchair. And I just got it outside and was trying to get it over to the man who needed it. He was very feeble, and she did not want me to do that.
So you deny that
I couldn't have done that because I was holding this church door open and taking the wheelchair out. And when I grabbed the front of the wheelchair, I don't know where she was. I don't remember how close she was to the wheelchair, but it's silly. Yeah.
Well, Jane, let's talk about when you get down to this paragraph, which is, the way this is written. This is a formal rebuke, whereas, therefore, that kind of thing, and it says here is your penalty part right here. Therefore, I hereby direct that Mrs. Jane Bernardel is forbidden to be on any property of any parish or any school, chancery office, or diocesan ministry within the territory of the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joseph at this time. Well, what has been the real impact? What does this mean to you, Jane?
Well, my canon lawyer actually in May I just had to call Father Ken Riley, and get permission for me to go to my daughter's baptism in another church in Missouri.
Yeah.
And, they took it extremely seriously and wrote a letter telling me I could, and how I could only go to the baptism and come back out.
But you're not even able to attend Mass in the diocese where you regularly attended Mass.
No,
that
and I
correct?
could not go to that mass that day. The baptism was thankfully afterwards. It really didn't tie in with the mass, of course. So,
Jane, what do you think is going on here? What is really at the heart of all this? Because you just told us that there was no conviction here. I mean, your case was legally dismissed. So now, the bishop took it upon himself, to really come down on you hard. And I want to point this out too, Jane, that he sent you this letter in February. It's not like you got the letter and decided, oh, I'm going to call LifeSiteNews and, do something about this. No, here we are months, almost a year later before you're finally talking about this. So what do you think is really going on, Jane?
The question from my canon lawyer, who she didn't know me from Adam, and so she had to know if she wanted to do this, help me with this case. And so she did talk to me for hours and hours, and she has had to go against a lot of bishops in the United States, or a few bishops in the United States. And she does know they're heavy-handed, but usually she can pinpoint why they're picking on so-and-so. But when I told her, I really just think it's just because I didn't mask, that at first she didn't believe me, but I really don't know what else it would be.
Well, that represents so many things to people. It was like masking became sort of a religion unto itself during that time. And, heck, there's still people running around with masks. I see them at mass on a regular basis, with, contrary to all the evidence that masks only did anything but harm people. But, now's a good time for you to talk about that, Jane. Why did you make the decision that you weren't going to mask?
Well, I think at the time, it was just an instinct that just felt very wrong to mask in church. And it wasn't like I went in against all these people. There was no one there. It was dark. My family was the only one there, except the person who opened the door. And, we, at that time, it was an hour before the prayer service was going to begin. And so it wasn't like I'd ever thought, oh, will I, I'd avoided churches that did make you mask, but I didn't think I would be put in that situation. But I guess I found out just how deep it was, that I would not mask in front of Jesus. So that it was interesting because that came up in the court hearing, and it actually went all the way to a judge, and the hearing lasted over 2 hours. And
I'm so sorry, Jane.
I forget what my train of thought, but the prosecuting attorney asked me, I'm masked today. I'm in you're in the courtroom today with a mask on, and you've been here for over, an hour. Why couldn't you mask then? And of course I said, well, that's because the presence of Jesus Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity isn't here. And she's like backpedaling because, oh yeah, she forgot that she was a Catholic too. So it did come up even in the,
You know what, Jane, I think that's what it is. I think we have bishops in this country who don't like Catholics. To be honest with you, I mean, that's the bottom line, because we know that most Catholics in the United States of America do not believe in the real presence in the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So there you go. Not long after I was doing a little tour of the Midwest back when all this was happening. Well, in the summer, so just a couple of months after I met with your family, I covered this heretical priest conference in Minneapolis, where you had Catholic priests and bishops attending this conference, where they were openly supporting homosexual marriage.
You were in the presence of that?
I took pictures. I've got the proof. I mean, yeah, I had a confrontation with one of the priests there at the time. But they think you're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, and I have this beautiful picture of our church. It is universal, and each bishop is in charge of a jurisdiction. And by the time you're done, the whole earth is covered with what is to be people who are to protect their flock.
Yep.
So it's weird that they would have the time to pick on me. Like, I don't work. I don't have a large following. I don't even have Facebook.
Well, Jane, you know what? You're my sister. That's who you are, and I guarantee you, everybody watching this right now is going to be lifting you up in prayer. So please know that, Jane. I know we've had so many conversations.
I don't mean to be so.
No, Jane, look. I can't believe how.
Our fountain, no matter what happens to us, no matter how much we're slandered, I know I have a Christian foundation that will get me through it. And
Yep.
I really am sad that I am still so upset about it. But
well, Jane, you have every right. This is an injustice. I think I've never heard of this before. You know, it's not like you were a real threat to anybody. You weren't any kind of threat to anyone in that parish, and you're the one who needs to be loved. You're the one who needs spiritual comfort right now. So tell us, Jane, you went into Kansas City, Missouri, because there was a Latin Mass. Do you have a Latin Mass where you can now attend in Kansas?
There is a Latin Mass in Kansas in a very extremely small church that I guess they bought the property, and it was a Protestant church. And my family really, to get there and get a pew and not go to the basement for the visual, there's always overflow every week, and so we have to get there. We leave early for it and have to get there. Around 45 minutes. If you don't get there 45 minutes before church starts, we would not have a pew.
Well, you know what?
We have a son with a wheelchair, so there's no place for the wheelchair, except the last two pews.
Oh. Well, before it's all said and done, we might all have to move to St. Mary's, Kansas. Who knows? And
it's looking, it has given me pause to think about what, our church is, Jesus's church is divine and pure and without blemish and stain. Yeah. So that makes me think something is wrong. And
you know what? 2 weeks ago, Bishop Schneider was sitting right here where I'm sitting right now, and he was talking about, Catholics may have to be prepared to join the underground church. I mean, that's what this is coming to, Jane. So Jane, where do you go from here? What's next? I mean, is this you talked about your canon lawyer, and is there any hope that an honest listening to your appeal will be heard?
I don't think so. That's why I'm talking to you, because I called you after the letter the response that the bishop sent to my canon lawyer in September, after she had taken a great amount of time visiting with me to understand the whole situation, and then writing a letter. So this second letter came back, and in her letter she had talked about how I don't need shunned, that I have a large family, and I should be taken care of by the bishop. And he said that it was it's his pastoral duty to punish me.
Yeah.
And that he wasn't shunning me, but that he didn't use act of charity, but it was his pastoral duty to punish me.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's going to be his pastoral duty now to be responding to all the phone calls that he's going to be getting and all the letters that are going to be coming into the office of the Diocese of Kansas City, Missouri. So, Bishop Johnston, we're appealing you to make this right, Your Excellency. So. Jane, thank you. Thank you for coming forward. I know this hasn't been easy for you. We've had many phone conversations, and you said no. I don't want to talk about this yet, because you were praying, you were hoping that it could be made right. But you're right. It just doesn't seem like there's any real hope that he's going to do the right thing here.
Yeah.
All right, Jane. Well, please know you're going to have tens of thousands of Catholics praying for you now all over the world.
Thank you very much, Jim.